This is Major Jarrett, the outgoing MNDB VBC Prevention OIC of the 98th Combat Stress Control. Today we're going to talk about Warrior, Resilience, and Thriving, our standard 90-minute class to help soldiers thrive through their combat deployment and return with honor. If you look at our title, when we say thriving through, not only surviving your combat deployment to return with honor, the question I want to ask you, the audience, is it enough just to get through? Or do we want to be able to get through, return with honor, enjoy what time we have with our families, and be able to redeploy again? We're in our 6th year of two front wars right now. And this product, 90-minute product we've developed, we hope will assist you. Next slide, please. What have people thought about WRT? WRT was fielded in 2005 and refined in 2006. After that, we took it back to Fort Bragg and then to Fort Lewis. And the product you see now, or you will see in the next 41 slides, is based on having trained 12,500 soldiers in the MNDB, or Multinational Division Baghdad area. We hope you, listening to this tape, will get as much out of this as the soldiers have who participated. Recently, our team has traveled theater-wide, training 341 providers, including chaplains, behavioral health, and other NCOs. We hope that you can take the same message from our training today as those who've attended our training. What are some of the comments we've had? We can't read it very well from the camera, but some of the ideas we've had are, it's one of the most comprehensive combat stress briefings soldiers have ever had. We've also heard this comment routinely. Thanks for not talking down to us. Thanks for treating us as adults. Thanks for telling us how it is. When you go through the program, you'll have the slide pack where you can read some of the ideas for yourself. But from E1 to 06, the response has been very, very good. Let's take a look at it right now. Next slide, please. We're going to color code our slides. It's going to be a little washed out for you here, but when you look at the program yourself, you'll see that our slides are color coded. WRT, Resiliency, Virtue, Character Strengths, and Rationality are going to be in blue for calm and control, just like the Pacific Ocean. And of course, Pacific means tranquil or calm. Warrior Ethos, Thriving, and Post-Traumatic Growth, we're going to put in Sage Army Green. Duty, Honor, Country, Code of Conduct. We want to know our colors, we want them to match up. So when you look at the program later, you have a better possibility of quickly taking what you need from the slideshow. Risk factors are going to be in red. Medical maroon red, irrational beliefs, combat operational stress, PTSD, and trauma. We're going to put those colors in red so you can be careful. If you've ever had a car with an RPM gauge, you might remember it went from green to yellow to red. When we are in red, we need to be careful, and we need to bring ourselves back to a yellow or green stage. We'll learn how to do that today. And finally, before we get underway, if you or another soldier is at risk, see a provider immediately. Warrior Resilience Training is not a replacement for licensed professional counseling. However, it's a wonderful augment to staying resilient and returning with honor. And actually, the program you'll receive today was the standard class I gave all of my clients, no matter what their issue was, to make sure that they could understand fully the thinking and feeling connection and how they can develop scientific optimism. Next slide. What are our goals today? Is that the first slide there? Our goals are to enhance resiliency, thriving, and post-traumatic growth. We're going to talk about post-traumatic growth, and if you were in one of my live audiences, I'd ask you this question. What is post-traumatic growth? How many of you out there have heard of PTSD? The answer usually is everyone's heard of PTSD, and everyone's heard of suicide awareness. However, how many of you have heard about post-traumatic growth? The ability to go through adversity and be made stronger by what you go through. By the end of the class today, you'll know as much about post-traumatic growth as you do about potential disorders. And that's more likely to occur for you than PTSD. We want to impart rational self-coaching and soldier counseling. We want you to be able to counsel others after you've counseled yourself. And not just by listening, but being able to ask critical questions of self and others to help you get back on track with your warrior ethos. We want to promote those 7 Army values, warrior ethos, and character strengths as foundations for resiliency. If you imagine a watch with many jewels inside it, keeping the mechanism going, your virtues and character strengths and your Army values are the virtual pivot points that allow you to continue to function well. So we want to go old school when we talk about virtue and character. Next slide. I want to inspire you if possible, not by our story, but the story of others. We'll talk about Congressional Medal of Honor winners. We'll talk about Marines that were burned over 80% of their body. We'll talk about people that have been through the Holocaust, how they did it, how they trained their mind. We'll even take you all the way back to ancient Greece and Rome and give you an idea of Stoicism and how people learned to manage their perceptions and how the very Stoic principles later affected the modern military. At the same time, we want to reduce your barriers to care. Is it enough for you just to help yourself, or do we need to be able to get the help we need? That's our goal today. And also we want to reinforce those resilient traits that you have, that you already exhibit. Remember, we're coming to you in WRT as fellow warriors. We're not coming out of a hospital. We're talking to you as warriors, and this tape was made for you in Iraq to try to assist you. We hope it's equally useful in Afghanistan as well. Next slide. We have 7 insights today. 7 insights to help you grow. Each insight is followed by supporting slides. Our first insight says, expect and prepare for adversity and hardship by developing resilient character, strengths, and virtues that will assist you to thrive. We call that the real foundation for resiliency. Next slide. We have some key terms. I have a chair over there. It's just out of your view, but it has 4 legs to it. And we believe that these terms are very important for you to understand resiliency. Remember, resiliency is not the same as stress management or anger management. It's not the same as one more course in combat stress control. Resiliency and post-traumatic growth is training your mind, emotions, and body to expect for and deal with adversity while keeping the following things intact. The first is endurance. Endurance is the ability or strength to continue or last despite fatigue, stress, or multiple deployments. And some of the synonyms you can read are intestinal fortitude, staying power. If you're an older person, you might use the word moxie. Endurance is like a professional athlete that's able to go season after season. Even if they're traded to another team, they're able to rally and put forth that professional effort. Our families need resilience, and we need resilience in combat. Resiliency itself is defined as the ability to recover quickly from illness, change, or misfortune. But look at the synonyms. Spiritual strength, vigor, durability, or my favorite, grace under pressure. Grace under pressure is the ability to do what you do and keep your demeanor about you, be a team player, and move forward to and through your objective. We all need that as professional soldiers. Character. 100 years ago in the United States, they didn't use the word personality. They used the word character. So if you were going to go to the Civil War, your parents might have a chat, and this would be the chat. I wonder if young John or Joan or whatnot has the character to do what they need to do. And where did we find these character traits? Our church, the Army, perhaps our immigrant group, our grandparents. Talk to your grandparents, I guarantee you they'll know about character because they probably lived it and they modeled it. And the very people that settled our country were people of high character that wanted a better life and came and took all risks to have that better life. When we talk about character, it's also known as moral excellence. WRT is not for the politically correct or people that can't hear the best truth we know to keep soldiers strong. When we talk about moral excellence, we're talking about ethical standards, living up to those character strengths that allow us to do what we need to do. Positive psychology, which has been out for a number of years, focuses on human excellence and virtues. Let's look at some of the classic virtues that most advanced societies support. They support wisdom, courage, justice, humanity, and something called transcendence, which in parentheses I put as spirituality. And that could be as simple as walking outside into a starlit night and having a sense of awe, AWE, looking up at the skies above, or it could be a formal church or religious path. But we found that resilient individuals have resilient communities, and they have a great vision and purpose, and highest purpose often. And then finally, our term thriving and post-traumatic growth. Enhanced functioning, positive change after enduring a trauma, adversity including relating to others, seeing new possibilities and choices, personal strength, spiritual strength, and appreciation of life. And one of the things you'll find out as you learn about post-traumatic growth is that not only are you stronger, but in some ways you realize you're more vulnerable. Not only do you have personal strength, but you know you need others more. That's a very good thing. So post-traumatic growth is our goal. Understanding what can impede us is our mission, and putting it together is our outcome. Next slide. Hardiness factors. They had studied individuals after the breakup of AT&T in the 1980s, not unlike some of the problems our economy is having soon enough. And they found out that there were certain individuals that were able to carry on and reconfigure and do well with their lives. What did they have in common? I'd want to know as a professional soldier, because if you can train yourself or have the right resources ahead of time, you're much more likely to remain resilient, or hardy. And this is adapted from Mahdi and Kobas's work. Hardy individuals have hardy role models. Was it that grandmother? Or was it that one coach that demanded excellence? Perhaps it's your E6 that asks you to do your utmost. They have cautious optimism. They prepare for the worst and they hope for the best. That means they make sure everything's in order before they roll out of country, before they get married, and they understand they are going to have setbacks. Hardy individuals are forward-leaning, but they also have situational awareness. They have social commitment. When bad times come, hardy individuals stick together. Hardy individuals say, we have much more strength in we than we do with I. In fact, I had heard once that there was a study they had conducted with some special forces individuals looking at their use of language after they'd gone through a heavy event, and I heard the ones that used the word we the most had lower rates of PTSD, and I'd have to get that reference on that, but no I in the word team. They seek challenges. Hardy individuals do foolish things. They jump out of airplanes. They volunteer to serve their country. Of course, those things aren't foolish at all. They take risks. And you take hardy individuals, you'll find out they're into extreme sports. They travel, they backpack, they live life to the utmost. And that gives them a form of stress inoculation training. And control. Hardy individuals control the meaning of events. They don't allow another person to dictate what their events mean. And if they don't know the meaning, they find the meaning. They look for the meaning in their spiritual strength or by the advice of the elders or any individual that can help you make sense of what you've gone through. Like they say, victory is not always external, but it's always internal. And another quote from Buddhism is this: pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Suffering is an interpretation, folks, and we want to be able to go through our pain without amplifying it by our interpretations. Next slide. Our first resilient role model is General Rhonda Cornum. Back in the Gulf War, she was a major. She's both a pilot, a physician, emergency doc, and in this case, she was going on a search and rescue. She went out in a Black Hawk helicopter. They received anti-aircraft fire, ground fire. She woke up being dragged from her aircraft, wearing her flight suit, which was holding together two broken arms. She was shot through the shoulder and ripped through the knee. During the time period she was in captivity, she was treated roughly at one point, and she went through some molestation from her Iraqi prison guards. She got through that situation. She didn't know if it was going to be 8 days there, as it turned out, 8 or 10 days, or 8 years. She had steeled her mind and was ready. But let's look at how she did it. Look at this quote. This is from her book, She Went to War. My grandfather knew firsthand about tradition and the loyalty to family, feelings that were cemented during 4 years in the Marine Corps at Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal. He told me about virtue and how a person's word meant everything. There were many worse things than dying, my grandfather had said, and one of them was living with dishonor. And something else she said in her book that's not on the slide is she thought her daughter Regan was made stronger by what she went through. General Rhonda Cornum is up at Headquarters GA right now, and she's long understood what post-traumatic growth means. There's another part to the story. When she came back on the hospital ship, she had the normal mental health evaluation, and in her narrative, by the time she was on her third evaluation, she told them, look, if I need help, I'll get it. I appreciate you doing the screening, but I'm not traumatized by what I went through. I intend to work through this and grow from this. So she's a good example of both seeking the help you need, and then when you've got it, not going any further than you need to. And she's an individual that espouses the warrior ethos. Next slide. Our second insight follows the first. Combat operational stress and combat operational stress reactions are much more common than PTSD itself, but all can be managed or treated effectively. When we talk about combat operational stress, we're talking about something almost 100% of us are exposed to. When we talk about combat operational stress reaction, we're talking about something around 70% of us are exposed to. And that could include sleeplessness, anxiety, depression, numbness, impulsiveness. We all know these. We've been training them in our standard combat stress control courses. Next slide. In this picture, which is a bit dim, we see a Marine in a place called Peleliu fighting the Japanese back in 1944 in World War II. If you could see the slide, you'd see his eyes are very hollow. We call that the 1,000-yard stare. That's a person that's been in combat and is going on that professional military training. They might be exhausted, they might be scared, but they're training on. We want you to know that your training in the military is extremely good. When the New York City Police Department comes down to look for new recruits, for the police force. They often come down to Fort Bragg where they look to get a paratrooper or one of those 18th Airborne Corps because they know military are going to act with honor. They've been exposed to danger. They've been exposed to leadership and personal responsibility. You don't want to ever forget as a soldier how in demand your skills are. And it doesn't necessarily have to be as a warrior. It could very well be working in society in many different fields. We are not all traumatized by deployment and combat, but around 70% will experience combat and operational stress reaction. Now, the research shows, and this might be the MHAT studies, this might be some of the VA studies, it says that about 20% of returning vets meet the criteria, not necessarily a diagnosis, for major depression, acute anxiety, or PTSD. Not all three together, one of those three or a combination thereof. If you listen to the media, you might imagine that 50% are coming back, 60%. We want you to know that the rate also for post-combat stress disorder, which is a term they're using more and more, and we'll talk about on the next slide, is only about 20%. Now what I want everybody in this video to understand is that you've got about a 1 in 5 possibility of coming back with something you need to work on, and our ability to help you work on it is better than it's ever been before. Next slide. General Ham's a person that knew about coming back with post-combat stress disorder. In 2004, he was the commander of the multinational brigade MNDN in Iraq. That's the northern area. And he happened to be the commander during the brazen suicide bombing in Mosul, where somebody infiltrated and blew up that. I had another friend of mine, his name is Creed McCaslin, and he was actually a Special Forces sniper that was there and actually saw the bomber before he detonated himself. In this particular case, my friend saw 7 individuals. He held them and tried to help them with CLS. But General Ham had that burden of command. He knew that 14 of his troopers had died. He gets back to America, and the most routine event had a strange effect on him. He said something was different. The dog comes bounding out of the house, leaps up on me, and I start bawling like a baby. I needed help, and I got the help I needed. Folks, if a general, Army general, can get the help they need and go public, you can get the help you need. Because what soldiers forget is sometimes it's a tune-up, sometimes it's a time-limited group. Look at it as mental maintenance, emotional maintenance, and bringing yourself back in the fight. We all have gone to spiritual retreats. We've all gone to workshops. Think of it the same way. This class is designed to give you some ideas to focus on that optimism and to stay resilient and stay in the fight. It's specifically designed for commanders